As many of you know, I started a new series where I try to find creative build combos and add on aesthetics to it to create a whole kind of fantasy filling build that's more focused on the playstyle and enjoyment of it and less on the numbers. This is a series I will continue to do. Next one I'm looking at making builds based off the upcoming Halloween skins, as well as just some general other ones I want to do. After making the first video, the open beta was coming around and I really wanted to further playtest one of the builds from the top creative builds video. I decided to take the Vulcan build, which is now rebranded into the Balrog Build, and make it work. So today I'm going to talk about the pros of the build, the cons, how it felt during open beta, and the future of the Balrog build. And if there are any other builds you are interested in for my creative builds, let me know. I still haven't decided what I want to run yet at the beginning of launch, so I'm curious about thoughts. But without further ado, let's talk about the Balrog build. The original idea behind this build was to fill that fantasy element of being this fire-wielding monstrosity on the front line. In order to get there, we obviously had to run Firestaff, and then we needed another weapon. The original idea was to run Greataxe, and that's what I did for the open beta. However, for launch, I'm exploring if other options would be better. I do want to avoid running Rapier, as I think that's the common build with Firestaff, and less exciting. Plus, I just don't see a Balrog using that kind of weapon. If you have any ideas for a good second weapon here, let me know, as I like the Greataxe, but I'm not completely sold on it. On that note, let's talk about the gameplay, then we'll get into the specific pros and cons of the build when I ran it. Gameplay wise, it was a lot of fun. I felt like I had a lot of options on how to go about things due to the fact that I had range and melee. However, the slow animations on the weapons did hurt a lot. Trying to cast a spell and constantly getting interrupted in the front line before swapping to the Greataxe and trying to use something there felt a little too long. To fix this, I tried changing up how the build worked. Instead of charging in with either the Greataxe or Firestaff, I instead tried to use Fireball to launch at the target, then charge them with the Greataxe and use that alone in melee. I wasn't exactly sold on this though, and this is kind of why I'm trying to explore other options besides Greataxes. On the note of gameplay though, I want to talk about a few items that I felt really limited my chance to gain insight into the build. Item number one is that I never got too high level in this playtest, so I never got the chance to experiment with gems and higher tier items, which I think hurt the build a lot. I always felt like I was lacking a bit, and a huge part of these hybrid builds is getting gems late game. And item number two is that due to me not playing the first few days of the beta, whenever I PvP'd, I was much lower level, and with the PvP scaling changes, it's hard for me to tell how weak the build is compared to just me being too low level for it to work. I also swapped around some abilities compared to how I had it in the original build video as I playtested it. I think not running Burnout is probably fine, but not quite sure yet. For the pros and cons. Pros, I did feel really strong in an AoE sense. Between the AoE damage of the Firestaff and the axe, it felt strong. I really wish I fought in a war with this, as this build was originally made to be this fiery demon on a capture point, and is not necessarily the best for duels or scrappy open world skirmishes. Another pro was that I had a lot of flexibility determining how I wanted to run this build, and anyone else would too. You could really take these two weapons and alternate abilities based off your playstyle, which I was doing a ton, and I really enjoyed that. For the cons, the damage behind the build just felt very weak, and that could be due to a few things. As I mentioned before, I only got this build to level 22-ish, so I didn't get a chance to get a lot of attributes yet, and my gear was definitely not the best it could have been. I think if we got this build to late game, it'd be more of a menace with high Firestaff and Greataxe mastery, plus good attribute points. But we never got to that point. I was struggling with a lot of PvE and PvP due to this weaker damage, so I need to figure out how to fine tune this. Sadly, the only melee at the moment that runs intelligence is the rapier, but I'm hoping that maybe a future melee weapon will also run intelligence. My current plan is to drop my strength attributes late game, max out my intelligence, and make sure to get an ignited gem into my Greataxe, as those gem conversions run off intelligence, making it so my Greataxe deals close to as much, if not more damage, than what it would with strength max, and I can keep my attribute distribution even between con and intelligence, with maybe a dabble into strength, depending on how it feels. This will help a lot in the damage of this build and make it viable, but that won't happen until late game, and I'm also exploring options outside the Greataxe for melee weapons, such as the hammer or spear, to instead use it to focus on stunning while I dish out damage purely with the Firestaff. Overall, I felt the open beta gave me a chance to really fine-tune this build more and get a better picture of how it plays out. Hopefully during the launch, I can continue to playtest this and make it work incredibly well. If you're interested in this build, and other creative builds, or this content in general, be sure to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.